But next tonight, a new drama series featuring the life and times of George Bulman.
Whisper is, Bulman's back. Whisper is, despite it back. Somebody walked over your grave, Lucy?
Word is out. Lucy McGinty and George Bulman, private detectives with a price to pay.
That's the man. Bulman, G. You're contracted by one Joseph A. Ravel to terminate my existence.
He should have stayed in China.
Bulman back on the case tonight at 9:30 on ITV.
Hello!
Hello,
I'm Andrew.
I'm Lisa.
Welcome to episode 34. Thank you. Of Around the Archives.
Glad you know.
must be April, mustn't it?
It must be April, yes.
Well, welcome everyone.
Yes, hello.
Any loose ends from last time?
There is one, yes.
Oh, it was the question posed in the Last of the Summer Wine articles.
Yes.
About the connection between Last of the Summer Wine and Pirates of the Caribbean.
Which they never quite got round to answering.
Yeah, they got overexcited.
They did.
And the answer is?
It's Jonathan Linsley.
That's right.
Who plays Crusher.
Yeah.
And he's in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, or a couple of them anyway.
Twice. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Shall we plug the videos and the blog as usual?
Yes, we've done lots of videos.
Yes.
And a few blogs.
Well, we've completed looking at the whole of season 1 of
Blake 7.
Blake 7
Yes,
recently
so if you
on
want
our
to look at that
channel.
Looking at it in a very different way. There's moments you wouldn't expect in a Blake 7 video.
I even dressed up for one of them,
did,
didn't I?
Yeah.
And I got my rocks out.
You got your rocks out, yeah.
But enough of that.
Yes.
We'll kick off with Martin Holmes.
Yes.
Returning, who's going to look at the worlds of
George Kitchener Bulman.
Well, now on YTV, Bulman returns.
Over the last couple of months, I've been re-examining the television career of one Detective Sergeant George Kitchener Bulman, the television sleuth portrayed by the actor Don Henderson across several television series made by Granada Television in the latter half of the 1970s until fairly late in the 1980s. I should mention that any article that attempts to introduce you to 3 entire television series is bound to give the listener less than comprehensive coverage of any of them. So I hold up my hands and admit that from the outset that this can only be seen as a general overview, which I hope will intrigue you enough to want to go and explore further. You might, of course, just think, well, my son, I'm not touching that with a proverbial. Although I hope not, in which case, at least I'm saving you some time. The character of George Bulman was first seen in the 3-part mini-series The XYY Man in 1976, and continued throughout the subsequent 10-part series the following year, before reappearing alongside his sidekick Willis in the TV cop show Strangers, for 5 years nestled snugly around the start of the 1980s. Finally, in 1985, a third series, simply entitled Bulman, reacquainted us with the old curmudgeon as he moved into retirement and considered the apparently far safer world of clock repair, until he was persuaded to become a private investigator by Lucy McGinty, the daughter of an ex-colleague, for a 13-part run, followed by a return for a second, shorter and absolutely final series a couple of years later. Because I remembered hugely enjoying the show at the time of first broadcast, I'd been considering picking up the DVD box set of Strangers, the middle of these 3 series, for several years now, but something else more attractive always seemed to come along and draw my cash off in another direction, and so I never seemed to get around to it. Then, as luck would have it, I found out that both it and the XYY Man were now available in far cheaper slimline packaging, and with the complete series of Bulman on the brink of release, it seemed like the right time to gather them all up and have a complete run-through of his many adventures. Well, about 65 of them anyway. Actually, it's a couple fewer than that, because of the peculiar anthology format the first couple of years of Strangers used to mix and match its lead characters in separate stories. This basically means that despite being the breakout character, old George misses out on being in a couple of them. Anyway, because I have the tendency to be a completist, all 3 were picked up, and because I prefer to do things that way, I started at the beginning and put disc 1 of the XYY Man into the machine and absolutely, utterly loathed it. It was one of those shows that just seemed full of unpleasant people doing unpleasant things, often to each other, and whilst its premise is based upon a now defunct theory about criminal behaviour, also incidentally touched upon by the Pricking of My Thumbs episode of Doomwatch about half a decade earlier, perhaps I ought not to have been surprised by this, given that the central character of Spider Scott, played by Stephen Yardley, just a small career step beyond his turn in Genesis of the Daleks, is supposed to be an unreformed criminal just out of prison. To be honest, it was the apartheid South African trappings of the tale, and some of the language being used that made me feel most uncomfortable. But so such things should, because that kind of society and the attitudes displayed ought to feel damn peculiar to our hopefully more enlightened modern way of thinking. So I staggered through the original 3-part miniseries, The Proposition, The Execution and The Resolution, in which Spider Scott, having been released from prison and being determined not to get sent back, is persuaded by British intelligence to do a little bit of thieving for them, in a tale of double dealing, double agents, and with detectives Bulman and Willis always on his heels determined to lock him up again, and kinda left it at that. Anyway, after dallying with several other series over the summer, I decided it was about time that I tried Strangers instead, and so, for the moment, I skipped the follow-up series of the XYY Man, despite my mother having had a close encounter with the show when it was being made, and describing that Stephen Yardley as a lovely man. They used the offices she worked in for some of the location work for the 3rd adaptation, consisting of the 3 episodes When We Were Very Greedy, Now We Are Dead, and Whisper Who Dares, which involves a rooftop break-in, and which are placed most illogically on the DVD releases in a 3-3-4 episode distribution, when the stories are in 4, then 3 parts again. It's as if the company doing the releases knew nothing about the series and its linked episodes, because with a little bit of a shift, all 4 discs could have contained a complete story on each, instead of 3 of them featuring incomplete stories. Ah well, luckily you've got people like us to keep you wise to such anomalies, dear listener. Anyway, all of this I found out later, because before I went back to the XYY Man, I did a run-through of the entire 5-year run of Strangers, a show created by one of the writers from the XYY Man, Murray Smith, and built around the characters of detectives Bulman and Willis working as police strangers, hence the title, who are brought in because they are unknown to the local criminal fraternity, and are therefore more able to go undercover to freely infiltrate themselves into their villainous schemes and bring them to justice. At least I think that's the basic idea behind the series, although it sometimes feels like a fairly vague hook upon which to hang the show. It's an oddly inconsistent series, with the styles, titles and music in a constant state of flux, as is the cast. The location filming, coupled with studio videotape technique, so familiar in television drama of those times and also used in the XYY Man earlier, vanishes after the short second run, and the programme moves totally onto film from Series 3 onwards. As I mentioned earlier, it starts off as a kind of anthology of police stories featuring various individuals, but not necessarily all of the main 4 cast members, with, alongside Don Henderson, Dennis Blanche as the ever-faithful Detective Constable Derek Willis, Francis Tomelty as Detective Constable Linda Doran, and a rather criminally underused John Renane as Detective Sergeant David Singer, who is nominally Bulman's equal, in rank anyway. The opening episode, The Paradise Set, serves as a foretaste of Don Henderson's later series, The Paradise Club, and finds Bulman and Willis relocated to Manchester, not that they'd ever been anywhere else, this being a Granada series in which Manchester used to pretend to be London all of the time, and trying to fit in around northern coppers who resented their presence, and the bizarre drinking clubs owned by peculiar northern comedians, giving a very eccentric feel to the series right from the off. They've been seconded to a new kind of squad, later to be referred to as the Intercity Squad, and by the end of this episode, largely set inside a Paradise Club, Bulman seems content to leave a cat burglar he spots going about his unlawful trade be, after spending his previous 2 television series appearances trying to catch Spider Scott at it. So maybe he's mellowing, even though he hilariously misses the great big crane being stolen from right under his nose, something which even gets a mention the following week, which is almost unheard of. The rest of the first series calms down a little after that, with tales of undercover operations and the running storylines involving Bulman's lack of promotion and his ever-present attempts at getting an education via the Open University. These telling character traits, alongside the ever-present woolen gloves he often wears, his willpower Shakespeare t-shirt, his literary quotations, the nasal inhaler he frequently brandishes, and the use of a carrier bag as a briefcase, as well as the fact that his knee twitches whenever it senses arch villainy is afoot, are the quirky little touches that help transform George Bulman from being yet another run-of-the-mill ten-a-penny television copper into a genuine TV character. Well, those and the nature of the cases under investigation, and the fact that Don Henderson seems to be a pretty fearless actor when it comes to blending in with the seamier and seedier aspects of life beyond the edge. Bulman's shabby demeanour seems very comfortable down amongst the dregs of society, and in one memorable episode he does find himself living amongst the homeless around the Docklands for a time, and ironically he does seem very at home there. Don Henderson and the writers seem to have enjoyed that aspect of him too, as they returned him to the very same situation in a sequel episode during the run of the later Bulman series. As far as I'm aware, however, these quirks were never quite enough to lift him to Columbo levels of public recognition, so he never got Yarwooded or Davroed. Episode 4 of that first run, one entitled In Accidental Death, features, by the way, the former Ian Chesterton himself, William Russell, portraying a rather dodgy businessman, and the series as a whole does attract a rather surprising number of familiar and high-profile guest stars across its 5-year run, as well as giving trial runs for the various styles of TV cop shows, a few of which, like Between the Lines and Juliet Bravo, appeared on our screens in very similar form several years later, which at least proves some writers were watching closely and mining the series for ideas. For example, the episode entitled The Tender Trap in Series 5 could almost be an episode of Juliet Bravo, with its no-nonsense female officer running a rural northern police outpost, and episode 5 of the first series, entitled Briscoe, finds Bulman going all out to bring down a corrupt police officer played by Michael Byrne in a kind of prototype for Between the Lines a decade or so later, a series you'll remember which featured Siobhan Redmond, who we will be coming back to later on. Strangely, however, a couple of episodes later on in that first run, Bulman then very briefly recruits the very same dodgy copper to assist him when he is trying, not very successfully, to protect a family in peril from some extremely nasty villains who want their money really badly in the final episode of that series. For a while, it looks as if this particular bad apple will be joining the team, but in fact he's never heard from or referred to ever again, a fate which also befalls both Frances Tomelty, a former Mrs. Sting apparently, when she transfers out early on in Series 2, and John Renane after the end of Series 4. Series 2 opens with a strong story set in the now lost world of the Northern Docks, Liverpool I think, due to that reference to D.S. Singer driving 30 odd miles up the motorway, but being Granada it might have been shot in Trafford Park. Anyway, like much of Strangers and the XYY Man before it, it gives many views of a Manchester resembling the one I grew up in, and much of which is now lost forever, so the rush of nostalgia I get from this show, or from just seeing one of those orange GM buses like the ones I went to school on, is worth the price of admission on its own. We are also given views of both Piccadilly Station and Manchester Airport during the run, both of which are seen before they were turned into the shopping malls they have since become. Early on in Series 2, after the team seemed to have bonded nicely during the Wheeler Dealers, there's only one more episode before Frances Tomelty does her vanishing act, and her abrasive and fiery Irish copper is quietly replaced by Fiona Mollison as Detective Constable Vanessa Bennett, who is an altogether more glamorous and posh girl copper with a tendency to cram herself into the very tightest of denim jeans, and she remains in place for the rest of the show's run. I don't really know why that casting change occurred, but perhaps those TV times were just not ready for the kind of real-world police officer Frances Tomelty seemed to be trying to present, and the powers that be may have wanted someone more easy on the eye televisually. Different times, but not so very different. Or maybe she just wanted to leave and Fiona Mollison knocked the audition out of the park. Who knows? Meanwhile, perhaps one small factor is the fact that Derek Willis does have a habit of waving pornographic magazines at the character in a way that actually leaves little to the imagination, perhaps simply offering a touch of unwanted realism from those times that seems rather surprising to modern eyes, or maybe the production team were just trying to see what they could get away with. After the rather brutal end to Series 2, in which George is held hostage after an incident at an occasionally snowy Greek-ish wedding, and Bill Tarmy makes one of his several appearances as an extra on both sides of the law in Strangers before he moved to Coronation Street, Series 3 brings Mark McManus to the team as the new boss of the squad, Hangman Jack Lammy, a kind of prototype for his far more famous term as "There's been a murder" Taggart a few years later, and who is, at least at first, also not averse to waving magazines featuring full frontal nudity right at the camera and holding them there as plain as day. Something for the camera boys? Honestly, fellas, it's really not necessary. As I mentioned before, Series 3 onwards is all shot on film and does actually benefit from it. I suppose that there was now a gap in the market from the demise of the Sweeney that Granada were hoping to fill, and at least for a time Strangers looked as if it might fit right in there. Certainly the filming does give the whole show a grittier feel and helps with the editing, but it also seems to lose lose something with it too, as if those little character interactions that you get when there's a room full of actors all giving it their all are lost when just one of them is the focus of the camera's attentions and the rest are otherwise engaged. A pair of episodes are set in Scarborough, which shows up well on film, although it's probably best not to get too attached to one bright new member of the squad introduced around this time who features in this particular story arc. There's also that very good one featuring Bulman going undercover amongst the homeless community, a setup, as I mentioned, that seems to have appealed so much that it actually gets a proper full-on sequel. By the end of the third series, Bulman himself does finally get his promotion to Detective Chief Inspector, and thereafter the squad is pretty much his to awkwardly manage as best he can. The opening of Series 4, the Moscow subway murders, is however the quirky and eccentric version of Strangers that I remembered it always being like, which only goes to show something or other, I suppose, and features George Pravda as Pushkin, a similarly driven and eccentric Russian policeman out to discover the truth behind a series of murders at whatever cost. Naturally, Bulman and Pushkin get on like a house on fire. Because I remembered really liking Strangers when it was first on TV, but the series I remembered was always like that episode, which, watching it all over again and in order, did rather disprove. However, with the occasional interference of Thorley Walters playing the shady spymaster Bill or Clarence Dugdale, things were never likely to be quite as they might at first appear in the shady world of Strangers. That said, the very last episode, with These Gloves You Can Pass Through Mirrors from 1982, goes into whole new areas of quirkiness as Bulman and his Russian ex-policeman pal Pushkin head to the rescue during a standoff involving Suzanne Danielle and a very Irish Patrick Mower riding along in a motorbike and sidecar with George decked out in a First World War flying helmet for comic effect, and this is very much a sign of things to come. Having finished watching Strangers and seeing George quit the force for reasons of personal conflict of interests, I went back and filled the XYY Man gap before moving on to the third show featuring the character, the eponymously titled Bulman. The XYY Man was still difficult to like, really, possibly because any examples of quirky eccentricity are quite toned down, naturally so, as it isn't really Bulman's show back then, although he does have his moments. Well, I suppose he must have for the bosses at Granada to consider making that spin-off. The XYY Man, however, is generally just a rather nasty and brutal show about nasty and brutal people, and it's rarely tempered by even a smidgen of self-deprecation. Mind you, the series is based upon several of Kenneth Royce's original books, so maybe that's a tad unfair of me because it might be very respectful of its source material, and it does have its moments, and several of the usual suspects to look out for playing unusual roles. After working my way through this series, and its interesting if not very likeable tales of double-dealing do-badders, I moved quite naturally onto Bulman, a series that only lasted 20 episodes across 2 seasons, the first 13 of which were in Series 1. Having it return for a mere 7 more episodes almost makes it seem as if they didn't really know what to do with the show, and it really feels as if they simply recommissioned the second run to finish it off, which is a shame really, because of the 3 series I think that it's Bulman that, on reflection, is consistently my favourite. For a start, you've got Siobhan Redmond playing Tom McGinty's daughter Lucy McGinty in one of her earliest TV roles, teaming up with Bulman to start STG Investigations, which runs in parallel to his ambitions to retire and set up a clock hospital, and she is, quite frankly, an utter joy to behold, and plays off the quirkier aspects of George's character quite delightfully. Siobhan has form, you know, in cop shows turning into something else involving PIs. Her later appearances in the series Between the Lines would also involve her partners leaving the force and setting up as independent inquiry agents, although this would all lead up to a far more devastating finale for that show. Other regulars and semi-regulars from the Strangers series do turn up from time to time, and it does take a few episodes before the series shakes off those shackles of its past and begins to soar. Funnily enough, George Bulman playing a seedy private eye does seem like a perfect fit, even though it does remind me from time to time of that other down-at-heel inquiry agent, one Frank Marker from Public Eye, a series which I may be returning to look at another time. Much like Frank did nearly 2 decades earlier, George even does a stretch inside for a time, but the 2 series and the reasons behind their respective incarcerations really could not be more different. George's betrayal of his fellow inmates leads to a death threat that has him skipping the country with Lucy and heading off to China at the conclusion of the first series, and it is quite possible that this is where we might have left the career of George Bulman, but it was not to be, as the series did return for that second, final and shorter run 2 years later. The problem, however, with finishing the first series on such a devastating cliffhanger is that if you're not going to simply leave it in the lurch like that, it takes an entire episode of Don Henderson sporting a Chinese-style beard and ponytail and a lot of convoluted plotting to reboot the series back to where it was. And then, when you've only got 6 more to play with before saying goodbye forever to the show, it perhaps hardly seems worth it. That said, however, those last 6 stories really are some of the very best episodes that the series produced. It loses all pretensions of being a normal detective series and goes off, at least in part, to a whole new level of quirkiness, which includes the episode The Chicken of the Baskervilles, which is, quite frankly, worth seeking out all on its own. By this time, of course, because the series has lost those pretensions to be a serious drama and has moved into the far more interesting bat-droppings crazy phase, the storytelling can become quite frankly bizarre, although the scene that Don Henderson plays fully naked in a bathhouse at a certain age, remember me mentioning earlier that he was an oh-so-fearless actor, is something that my memory is struggling to forget. Something else we ought not forget, however, is that Murray Smith was an exceptional writer too. There was something about the way that he could make you know all you need to know about a character, and perhaps utterly dislike them, with just one line of dialogue that smacked truly of genuine genius. There's a scene set in a country house in the first series where some posh boys are bothering swans by a lake, and you learn all you need to know about just how unpleasant one of them is from his one remark at the lakeside. And I was reminded of this, because I'd forgotten the remark itself, but remembered how it made me dislike the character, when Lucy meets up with an old flame in the second series, and when she is introduced to a friend of his, who replies with, "Is this the Lucy you write poems to but never post?" Isn't that truly wonderful? It's an astonishing, devastating, almost poetical single line of dialogue which tells you everything you need to ever know about this lad and his hopes and his dreams and his yearnings and his failures, which any aspiring TV writer ought to pin above their computer to look at and weep over whenever they are thigh-deep in scenes crammed full of tedious exposition. Sadly, this sometimes quirky, sometimes rather savage and brutal set of programmes came to a rather abrupt end, with George rather mournfully tootling on a saxophone and Lucy heading off to Manchester and new opportunities after they've been forced to fake their deaths after more devious machinations involving Bill Dugdale. That melancholy saxophone solo drifting across the tense atmosphere that has developed between our two heroes over their recent dice with death immediately chimes with the memory of lonesome old Frank Marker, and is the last we would see or hear of former Detective Chief Inspector George Kitchener Bulman, formerly of Scotland Yard and the best clock fixer in London Chesterford. All 3 series are good, but all of them are inconsistent too, if you know what I mean. That's why I wrote this as a general overview of all 3 shows, rather than my usual focus on one particular episode. However, if you'd like a few pointers at some of the very best episodes the shows have to offer to a new viewer, I'll recap a little. For a Juliet Bravo style fix, I'd recommend Strangers Series 5 The Tender Trap, and Series 4's The Moscow Subway Murders shows the series at its quirky best. The XYY Man is hard to like, and the episodes are linked into 3 or 4 part stories, so that can be a bit of a commitment, but they are all watchable with the caveat of being of their time, of course. And Bulman is pretty much all good stuff, although even it can get a little brutal from time to time. But The Chicken of the Baskervilles is a standout for me, although Series 1's One of Our Pigeons is Missing is an interesting sequel to Tom Thumb and Other Stories from Series 3 of Strangers, if you want to see George in full-on down-and-out mode. There's a lot to be said for the era when TV drama as entertainment didn't have to always involve ordinary people being miserable, but it could be more escapist. Life's miserable enough without watching more of it when you're at home. And Bulman, in all his incarnations, with one foot in the real world but another foot firmly planted way beyond the outskirts of ordinary everyday normality, was an astonishing television character, and one well worth getting to know. I hope you enjoy the journey. Just don't forget to keep a pair of gloves handy.
Thank you very much to Martin.
Yes, thank you, Martin.
We've got all of the available Bulman material.
I think so, yes. We haven't really watched any of it, but we've got it.
It is there.
It's there to be ploughed through at some point.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Right, next up, Andy Priestner lifts a finger and an article is there.
Yes, as he visits us for the first time.
Yes, he will be back later.
Yes.
To look at
Fingerbobs.
Fingerbobs
Fingerbobs. Yoffie lifts a finger, and a mouse is there. Puts his hands together, and a seagull takes the air. Yoffie lifts a finger, and a scampi darts about. Yoffie bends another, and a tortoise head peeps out. These hands were made for making, and making they must do.
Fingerbobs was created by Joanne and Michael Cole, who were also responsible for the wonderfully weird Bod, for which the writers drew on their Taoist beliefs, and the lesser-remembered Ragtime with Fred Harris. Fingerbobs first aired in February 1972, just a few weeks before I was born. 13 episodes were made in total and repeated throughout the remainder of the 70s. As you probably remember, the programme largely centred around the character of Fingermouse. Other recurring characters were Flash the Tortoise, Gulliver the Seagull, and Scampi the Scampi. More on Scampi later. Each character had their own song, and the one you'll remember is for Fingermouse.
Fingermouse, Fingermouse, they never stop to think a mouse. The always on the brink a mouse. Fingermouse, that's me. I am the mouse called Fingermouse, the mouse with guts and verve. I get past cats so easily with my famous body swerve. Fingermouse, Fingermouse, I'm a sort of wonder mouse, a hit, a miss, a blundermouse. Fingermouse, that's me.
Personally, I never drew a distinction between Fingerbobs and Fingermouse, thinking them both a name for the mouse character. Perhaps because he was in every episode and it just felt like his show, when in fact, of course, Fingerbobs is actually the umbrella name for all the characters in the programme. But then, if he was Fingermouse, why weren't the others called Finger Seagull, Finger Tortoise and Finger Scampi? Watching it again, I was a little confused by how different it felt until I realised that it was the fact that it was in colour that felt strange. I'd only ever seen it in black and white, you see, as a child on a bulky big brown TV. And the biggest surprise of all was Scampi, who was bright pink, like a Scampi. Little me thought he was simply Fingermouse's weird little cousin rather than a sea-based creature. I didn't know what a Scampi was, so presumed it was just a name like Flash. I liked Flash back then, but watching it today I was largely irritated by how slowly he talked and moved.
Do you mind, says Flash. Round things. Yes, you know, round things. Slowly, steadily, I move at my own pace. They call me Flash, though I won't dash. Who wants to run a race? As long as I get there, why worry? What's the hurry?
We need to talk about Yoffie, a weirdly named, archetypally 70s joy of sex type guy with a multitude of jumpers and hip cravats. I always thought Yoffie had a slightly odd voice. Turns out that was just his Canadian accent. And he wasn't really called Yoffie either. He was in fact Rick Jones. Rick is still with us and cropped up in the papers around the time that the BBC decided to get rid of TV Centre, telling us about regularly taking marijuana while working as a presenter on Play School. That stuff always makes good copy, doesn't it? Later in his career, he fronted a country rock band called Meal Ticket, and he now lives with his wife, Valerie, in San Francisco. I'm kind of surprised he lasted as long as he has, to be honest. Anyway, Yoffie is central to Fingerbobs. He gives life to all the programme's characters, with his hands forming different parts of the creatures' bodies. His Fingermouse is, of course, a cone with ears affixed to a grey glove, which he moves with a spider-like roving hand, while Gulliver is both his hands in white gloves coming together with a ping-pong ball for a head to make a simple but effective seagull. What I always found strange about Yoffie was how for the opening and closing scenes they didn't even try to disguise his connection to his paper-based puppets. although for the middle parts of the episode his creations get to roam free, separately to Yoffie. I didn't question it too much at the time, but I remember it distracting me a little. But then the whole programme was pretty strange when you think about it. But like all that weird 70s kids TV, you just accepted it and kind of let it wash all over you.
There was once a country where everything was made of things that were round. There wasn't a straight thing there. The cars had round wheels, but the roads were very bumpy. They couldn't be straight, because in this country, there were no straight lines. The country was ruled by a round king and a round queen. They had a daughter, the Princess Rotunda.
I watched 3 episodes in total today, entitled String, Sounds and Bumpy. Titles which, by the way, were not ever given on screen. The DVD menu and the information about the episodes of Fingerbobs all over the web are entirely wrong, by the way, about which episodes feature which characters. So I spent an awful long time trying to find a Scampy episode. Eventually, the episode Bumpy turned out to feature him. Even Fingerbobs isn't free of 70s sexism. His scampy girlfriends, yes, all 5 are his girlfriends apparently, his little harem, are useless and giggle all the time because they are merely girl scampy. Rude.
I flick up my tail and swim in the sea with haddock and plaice and dabs. I wriggle on rocks with my little legs, past lobsters and limpets and crabs. My name is Scampy, Scampy, that's me. I live on a hand in the sand by the sea.
Pointed shells. What could be bumpier to walk on? I'll get my girls to help. Cooey! Cooey! There are lots of empty limpet shells lying about on the beach. Collect as many as you can. Off you go, girls, and no hanging about giggling. Off you go. No hanging around, I said.
I was quite surprised at how much theft took place in the episode String. Fingermouse steals a football, while Gulliver half-inches a suspiciously Russian-looking red flag, presumably to match Yoffie's undoubted political outlook, a kite string, and some dolls' clothes from a dolls' clothes line. Some of the items are later returned, including the dolls' clothes, but he puts them back on the washing line in the wrong order. And as one of the items is a pair of dolly knickers, I'm slightly worried about the doll thinking that there's some sort of pervert hanging around their washing line. The kite string doesn't get returned though, because Fingermouse appears to persuade Yoffie at the end of the episode that he can keep it. Yoffie announces that he will return the kite string later, but not very convincingly. I guess the thefts relate to Yoffie needing to tell a story towards the end of each programme, for which he requires the things that all the characters find. So it's a kind of reverse bagpuss, I guess. In the episode Sounds, there is thankfully much less theft, as Fingermouse and Flash record sounds in a music shop for use in the story, on what was probably the smallest reel-to-reel tape recorder I've ever seen. The story that Yoffie tells at the end of this episode features the tale of Kenneth the Pony. Yes, Kenneth the Pony. Elsewhere in the series, we meet Fingermouse's girlfriend Gloria, Enoch the Woodpecker, and Louise the Squirrel. Yep, Louise the Squirrel. It's like calling a cat Julie.
There's only one more soft thing I need, and I've sent Gulliver to fetch it.
I like to rise and spread my wings, white upon the breeze. I like to soar and spread my wings above the roofs and trees, and then to swoop down, down into the town, fold my wings behind my back, and see what's going on.
Fingerbobs was apparently phenomenally cheap to make, and it shows. But I think they can be excused because the show's central conceit was that children should be able to make the characters and the settings themselves out of handicrafts. The sort of things that were everywhere back then. Paper, wood, buttons, string. And sometimes simple is all you need. I recall, though, that I never tried to make Fingermouse or any of the characters myself. I was more than happy with my red dog, named Red Dog, a big yellow teddy bear called Yellow Donta. No, I've no idea what the Donta bit meant. And my huge Orinoco Womble, which I'm clutching in many faded 70s snaps. So what do I make of Fingerbobs in 2019? Well, it's definitely a nostalgia fest that takes me back to that front room in Ashington, a town north of Newcastle where I spent some of my childhood and cultivated a Georgish accent, now long gone. Why, man, of course I had an accent. Other than Fingermouse himself, I think it's the raffia-backed titles that feel the most resonant. We forget how much raffia there was about in the 70s. We certainly had raffia table mats and coasters all over the house, and of course those ubiquitous macrame plant pot holders. And in this way, Fingerbobs just merged with my everyday existence. Fingerbobs was weird, but it was also kind of normal. And when Yoffie lifted a finger, I was very happy to sit transfixed and watch whatever happened next. Louise the squirrel, though? Really?
What's that? Looks like a moving bush with ears. Oh, it's gone. Oh, it's come back. What is it? Oh, yes. It's Louise, the squirrel.
Thank you to Andy for another lovely article, and Andy will be returning later on in this episode for more chat.
And now, Paul and Nick return, and they're going to look at a comedy series known as
Queenie's Castle.
Hello, Troby and Lisa. It's me, Paul the Shy Yeti, and it's Nick the slightly sleepy late afternoon Nick. This time we're going to review 2 episodes of a series from the very early 70s called Queenie's Castle. It's a sitcom. It's got Diana Dors. I'm particularly a fan of 70s and 80s Diana Dors, and yeah, we're going to probably do the first episode from 1970 and maybe the first episode of the 3rd season. There's 3 seasons, and I've only seen some of the first episode. I've had this set a while, but have you any knowledge of this? Did you know anything about it at all?
I mean, it sounds vaguely familiar, but I've never seen an episode.
No.
And well, I like you. I'm quite keen on Diana Dors. So.
Well, you would have been very young, and I wasn't even born when it finished. So it finished in 72, and I wasn't born till 73. So.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what we think of. At least the first. We might stop halfway through. We'll see whether it's got natural ad breaks.
And now it's a brand new series, Queenie's Castle, starring Diana Dors.
My goodness, it's like it's in the room. So we watched the first segment of the first episode of Queenie's Castle, and well, Diana Dors is playing Queenie, the head of the family.
Diana Dors is playing Diana Dors.
Yeah. She's quite. Do we think it's set in Manchester or something like that?
It's certainly, it's up north and it's grim, shall we say?
Yes.
But yeah, it's interesting because I find it more interesting than funny, to be honest. It's pulls no punches in being a very deprived area and very mega working class, which is very much coming out of the kitschy dramas of the 60s. So it's very interesting. Every other woman is wearing a quasi Mary Whitehouse specs. Diana Dors, I mean, you wouldn't mess with her, would you? She's
got 3 sons who live at home. They're all scallywags, and her brother-in-law, or is it not her? Is it her brother or her brother-in-law? I think it's her brother-in-law because the husband is away.
That's right. Yeah.
The husband's away working on the motorways. Whether that's true, I don't know.
Played by Tony Calder, who turned up in EastEnders as one of Pat's hubbies, and also was in 3 Doctor Who's. We're just about doing Colony in Space when he did this. So it's more of a slobby part for him than I've ever seen him in.
Because they realise after a bit of conversation that it's Queenie's birthday and nobody, of course, has bought a present. So whilst the others are distracting them, possibly it looks like the youngest son heads off down the estate to find out what he can nick to bring back, and that mostly involves nicking some flowers from somebody's window box and presenting it. And the person he nicks the flowers from is played by Lynn Perry, who is better known from 80s episodes of 80s and 90s episodes of Corrie. There's this one bit just before the ad break where, having come to complain about somebody stealing her flowers, Queenie decides that maybe she needs a parting gift, threatens to throw a loaf of bread out the window, but it appears to bounce, or maybe that's just what I thought. It narrowly misses her anyway, but I thought it also bounced at one point. Bounced back up again a bit.
To be honest, I mean, it's as I say, as a social snapshot, it's very interesting. As a comedy, it's a bit like Wurzel Gummidge. You end up kind of admiring the writing more than actually laughing at it. I don't know, I presume we were supposed to laugh at Wurzel Gummidge, but
we haven't told them that it's.
It's Willie.
It's written by
Willis Hall and Keith Waterhouse, who did the very famous duo of writers. But I mean, the Forgotten Birthday is about the oldest sitcom trick in the book.
I mean, I know what you mean about. I mean, Wurzel Gummidge is a funny one. Is that drama? Is that comedy?
Yeah.
I mean, when I watched it more recently, it almost made me cry in the way that
it's incredibly dark and tragic, and Pertwee is giving it 120% as Wurzel. But with this, there's a bunch of hateful.
It's hard to.
I mean, even Diana Dors' character seems unlikable, I
mean, sometimes in this sorts of series you get used to catchphrases, so it's hard to know if there are any catchphrases or if
Barry also, because there's a character played by Barry Rutter who's sort of slobbing on the telly watching TV, and every time Diana Dors goes past, he sort of raises his legs in a sort of pseudo-sexual way. I kind of sort of, oh, please don't do that. No, that's you're supposed to be your mother. But no, it's very interesting. But I mean,
there's elements of Only Fools in there. Certainly in the flat and the sort of ducking and diving and I think I prefer in a way when it comes to that sort of thing. When it's comedy that's mixing around in drama, I prefer something like Minder, which is a drama which is funny or has funny segments. It's not trying to be a sitcom.
Minder's a nice combo. It's genuinely funny, and but it is supposed to, it's a drama. It sets itself up as a drama. Whereas I'm not grouping this with Liverboat. All the Carla Lane ones for me they're under the title comedy, but they so want to be dramas, and tragedies. I find them very uneasy to watch.
This isn't quite like that, is it?
Oh no, it's very much a bulk standard sitcom, ITV sitcom, but no, the pathos of Carla Lane stuff was always horribly misplaced, I think. But
let's see what we think. Moving on to the second half of this episode.
Yeah.
Well, we've watched the first episode, and Queenie continued to have a sort of birthday party, although the pub was suspiciously empty. It mainly seemed to have her family in it, and Brian Moseley, as otherwise known as Alf Roberts from Coronation Street, as the barman. And who was the who did you spot?
Who did I spot in the
shop?
cast?
In the shop. Yes.
There's Kathy Staff of Nora Batty fame.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the main one. Wasn't it? That was her and Alf Roberts. Yes. Yes.
I think it'd be interesting to know if prior to this, I know they've been going for quite some time, Hall and Waterhouse, because they did Long and Short and Tall, which was like about 10, 11 years before. I wonder if they've ever fallen foul of Mary Whitehouse, because Lynn Perry's character, who is just like Mary Whitehouse and has got a petition and is trying to get them out, gets a hell of a raw deal.
Because she wants just 5 more names on her petition to get rid of them, and then they end up signing it, or do they? But they stick on that.
It's one of those things where your sympathy lies with the person that's being shafted. You can see why she's got 400 petitions. They are a complete bunch of hateful assholes.
I don't know. I think I'd go.
I think we're supposed to like them, but
I'd go as far as to say I don't really like anybody. I don't like her character because she is that horrible meanie now.
Yeah, I mean, she
don't like her any more than I like them.
Yeah, I mean, she is a bit pompous, but you can she's got
also
400 people that want them out, and
also particularly as there's that scene where they're kind of menacing her around the estate.
That was actually rather uneasy to watch, in a comedy, in a sitcom.
I know.
You've got a defenceless woman with these 3 brutes of a men sort of looking menacingly out. It doesn't exactly endear you to the leading characters.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I always hate it when villains don't act like they, when something goes wrong or someone's, they just get more cross. It's like, come on, you're treating people really horribly and badly, and now somebody's turned on you. Well, you kind of deserve it, and you just put your hands up and go, all right, fair enough, but baddies rarely do that. But then there would be no story if they did.
Which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about all of the Queenie's family, are a bunch of villains, and it annoys me when people are being bullies and yet they act like indignant when somebody they sort of calls them out on it.
I mean, they nick at Lynn Perry's flowers, and that was very nice. Maybe I just like the TV heroes to have a bit of gallantry, but I mean, obviously, the basis of it is that they are petty crooks. But
Queenie, at the end of the episode, she's just in the pub, being quite loutish, and in a way, I think it would work better if she was as nice, and everyone around her was, or almost to the point where people were beginning to doubt that they'd seen bad happening because Queenie had sort of tricked them out of by being such a charming person. But
I think you've actually got it there. I mean, I think it the whole thing would work much better if Queenie was the moral compass that reels them in and keeps that. Instead of which she only seems to sort of whack them if they disrespect her.
Even if she's the gem in the centre and she's the mastermind, but if she was acting really sort of innocent, but still being the puppet master or mistress, well. If we watch an episode from...
I'm just saying, when that policeman walked in, please arrest them. Sodding lot of them,
We'll give an episode from a later season ago and see whether... I mean,
they probably would have, sort of joined a monastery by then.
They can't get much worse.
But yeah, it's. I imagine it. Don't get me wrong. There's some super people in it. I mean, Diana Dors is legendary. Barry Rutter's a very good actor, and so is Tony Coleman. So you've got people like Brian Mosley. So it's good stuff. But
it's struggling to find a character you like, because I don't like.
They're
bullies.
All thoroughly unlikable, and you kind of. It's just painful to watch because the outcome is always, if it's going to switch. It's a bit like on the buses. I used to. I hate that because I feel so sorry for Blakey, and the whole thing is always loaded against him, and without much shade.
We're going to try and watch like the first episode of season 3. Is that right? Is that what
I presume so. I've just put the last disc in. And,
yep, that's right.
We can watch it you like. We'll
go for the start of the season. You hope that the first episode of the season is going to be a good one. So. Okie dokie. Let's see if you can impress us, Queenie. So we did as we said, and. We're watching episode 1 of season 3 of Queenie's Castle. Now, on first looks, nothing much has changed.
Tony Calder's got a different shed, and he's saved up during the season for a different shed.
And the younger son's hair is slightly longer.
Now, were you saying the last season was 72?
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's obviously set 3 years earlier than it is, because
they're going about the moon. Maybe they were
69.
Because the humour's so sort of whatever, they could just have been being sarcastic, but it's not played in such a way that you're just a bit confusing as to.
It is, but then a lot of Hall and
but then that one wasn't. I noticed that this. I was looking at Wikipedia, and although it says they wrote. They definitely wrote that first episode, but they didn't write this one. So it came up with a different name.
Stuart something.
Yeah. We've also discovered that it's set in Leeds, not Manchester.
Which I've been to Leeds. I went to the City Varieties Hall to watch Panto, and
I think it's because they kept.
Lens in Leeds.
I think it's because they kept calling each other. Queenie kept calling the kids our kid and stuff, and I thought that was just a Manchester thing, but maybe it's.
Ali and I've been to Yorkshire Television in Leeds, the studios where we saw Emmerdale set, the set of Emmerdale.
Now, the plot of this one is that I've lost exactly why, because I mean I don't think they've done anything any worse than they usually have. They're just usually awful. But anyway, this episode she's thrown them out, and they thought she was kidding, but she called a taxi, and they were pretty much escorted out of the building. And then soon afterwards, there was a. When I say a funny scene, funny for this programme, there was a scene where they get out of the taxi, and one of the kids. But again, it's hard to know whether he's such an idiot that you don't know whether he's just being silly or whether he believes it. But they're in like an industrial estate, and he says, "This must be what the country looks like." And I mean, Tony Calder just shakes his head, but I don't know quite whether he really believes that or whether that's just them being sarcastic or silly. But anyway, Lynn Perry turns up back at the ranch, and it informs Queenie that there's a prowler on the loose, and Queenie hasn't got much time for this theory because, of course, she's got 4 strong blokes living in the house, except that she hasn't, because she just shut them out, which is where the episode sort of stopped for the advert break. So,
you got the feeling that they're going to joke them out. Oh, it's a plot device. That they'll be back. It's almost a shame that they are, because the place looks so much better without them. It's actually quite civilised. But again, Queenie's still a very unsympathetic character. She's probably the least sympathetic Diana Dors, or least likeable Diana Dors character I've probably seen.
Outside of horror films.
Outside of horror films, yeah.
She's not Adamant's prince, fairy godmother, is she?
No. It's a shame. It's full of talented people, but the plots are very cliched, and the characters you don't give a tuppence for.
I mean, it's hard to know. It's hard to know whether they were as cliched then, to a certain extent, but whether or not. But
I think maybe they weren't so cliched then, but
the characters are definitely pretty unlikable.
I mean,
you can't dispute that much.
That sort of plot line was cropping up in the Likely Lads, and long before this.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wouldn't mind betting there's an episode somewhere in the season where somebody appears to inherit a fortune and everyone's nice to them, and it all falls through at the end. That's another one that keeps going over and over and over again. I'm just snobby about comedy.
Luckily, we don't have to watch all the episodes to find out if you're right. But
there is one observation though with the advert break picture. It's done the estate's done in a kind of fisheye lens, and it makes it look like the Royal Albert Hall.
Apparently, the actual estate, I was reading on Wikipedia, the actual estate was an Art Deco. That's an Art Deco 1930s style, which has
what went wrong?
Since been demolished. Well, I think it's considered.
Art Deco's nice. It's sort of Ponzi and.
Well, maybe it fits the series. I was hoping for Diana Dors being a strong female character, and she is. But
she's a strong bitch.
She is a strong character, but she's totally unlikable. So it's not quite fulfilled my dreams. There we go.
Fulfilled your dream? I didn't know you had dreams about.
I have dreams about Diana Dors. Not those sort of dreams, but I have dreams of her being feisty, but feisty in a fun way, which isn't what is happening that much at the moment. But let's watch the last bit and see if in part 2 she can raise a bit.
I hope it's going to flip on its back and say, "No, I'll beat up the Prowler myself and leave them all out there."
Well, the Prowler.
I think that's too much.
So we finished our second episode, and it mainly seemed to involve. I think the best bit of it was the start of the second half, where Lynn Perry's character came back, and they ended up having to share a bed because they were both scared that the Prowler was going to come round. And then pretty much the rest of the episode was just one after another of the sons and Tony Coulter's character sort of scaring her as they returned to the fold. And then the quarter of an hour was up and it was time for the end of the episode. There wasn't much more to it. Am I being unfair?
I have to say, jokingly, I kind of said, I might have actually said it when you were recording, but it'd be nice if it flipped out, because the predictable thing would be back in the bosom of their family, which you think is going to happen, and then she actually does push them out.
She does show them out again for the second time.
Yeah, which is quite nice. It's just, although Lynn Perry is revealed as the Prowler, it's nice that they don't sort of dump her in a bath of baked beans or sort of do something nasty to her.
She's sleepwalking, isn't she?
Yeah. You almost get, every time she's around those characters, you almost kind of afraid for her because it's so kind of abominably dysfunctional. But no, again, talented cast, but I can see why it's fallen through the floorboards of the TV history. Really,
I think at a push they were slightly, and only by a very slight degree, more likable in the second. They were slightly more likable in the second episode.
They're more settled, actually. I mean, Tony Calder's eulogising about the achievements of man when they're doing the moon land, which all he was interested in is catching the football and so on and so on. But
and one of the sons has a Dougal T-shirt, which is one of the highlights of the episode.
Yes.
If not the highlight of the episode.
Barry Russ is a they're all very good actors. It's and I guess ITV paid a bit more as well because of its being a commercial channel. It was there was a little bit more dosh, and I see. Yeah, they all picked. Yeah, we mentioned Leeds last time, didn't we?
Yeah.
But yeah,
they did go on location though. When they did that scene where they thought they were in the countryside, they didn't take them to a very nice part of Leeds, but they did go outside of the set. But I also said to you, not only does the set of the flat remind me of Only Fools and Horses, it also reminds me a bit of the flat you often see Eric and Ernie in 60s or 70s Morecambe and Wise episodes.
Yeah.
Probably just the logistics of setting up this. It just looks like a shabbier with some horrible turrets outside the window. Otherwise, you expect one of them expect one of them to hear a siren and say, "You won't sell any ice creams going that speed."
Yes.
If they did, that would be the funniest joke of the whole episode.
Or the three-wheeler turning up.
Yeah.
But,
well, I'm certainly.
I'm glad we've sampled it.
Yeah, I'm sorry that our opinions weren't largely that positive, but well, it can't always be good, and still there are certainly things. I've got the box sets. I may watch some more, maybe just one or two here or there. But you did, before we go, you did remember one episode where Diana Dors plays a character even worse than this.
One of the first joint ones of these ad hoc reviews we've done for RTA was, or is it? It is for RTA, isn't it?
Yes.
It was Thriller, and one of the episodes of Thriller, quite probably one of the most famous ones, is when Diana Dors was playing the devil. So apologies to Queenie, she isn't the most unlikable character that, and I think she was pretty.
I don't know.
I think she was.
You're being unkind to the devil now.
I think she was pretty nasty in The Amazing Mr. Blunden.
Yeah, and I've seen her in horror films where she's not particularly likeable, but anyway.
But Diana Dors, class act though. I mean, she's reminded me a little bit of British Shelley Winters. Shelley Winters, sort of big wig, lots of glamour, and everyone's mum basically. Yes, there you go. That was Queenie's Castle.
That was Queenie's Castle. Thank you, Toby and Lisa, for letting us talk about it.
You didn't really have much choice. Really.
They cannot put it on the show if they really hate it.
Bubbles to the lot of you! Go on!
Apollo 12 touches down on the moon early on Wednesday morning. BBC One will have continuous colour coverage of man's second moon landing. The first signals from Apollo 12 as the lunar module is on its descent orbit will start at 3 minutes past 7 when the command module emerges from the rear side of the moon. In the BBC Space Studio, Cliff Mitchell-Moore, James Burke and Patrick Moore will be joined by astronaut scientist Curtis Michael. Men on the Moon starts at 7 o'clock on Wednesday morning on BBC One in colour.
Thank you very much to Nick and Paul.
Yes, thank you, boys.
It's interesting to do something that I think none of us are particularly keen on.
Yes.
But I like their sort of honesty in that.
Yes.
And we've just watched the Prowler episode.
We have, yes.
And the moon landing scene is quite interesting.
It is
actually.
Yeah, they can't seem to make their mind up what they're talking about. It's left quite open ended.
Yeah, because although Apollo 11 and 12 are 1969, this episode was actually shown August 72. And Apollo 16 is April 72, and 17 is December 72.
Okay.
But I guess it's the thing that, although even by Apollo 16 it's become a familiar thing on television.
Yes.
It's still an amazing achievement, isn't it?
It is. It's an amazing achievement now. Nobody's been on the moon for 40 odd years, have they?
But also, you had a Dougal T-shirt like that.
I
didn't
did.
You?
Well,
dark blue background.
Dark blue, yeah.
But
It was black.
Yeah, yours said "woof" on it, didn't it?
Yes. Yes. Oh, I don't think did Dougal ever say "woof"?
Not really. No.
Well, not on Eric Thompson's version, anyway.
No.
So.
But anyway, now we're delighted to have an interview with Andy Priestner.
Yes.
Who found himself in the Bournemouth area.
And we were lucky enough to meet him.
And sent me a message saying, "Can I come round?"
Yes, can I come and see the sofa?
So, luckily, we were able to sort of jiggle our schedule a bit.
We were, yes.
And here we are. Some fun with Andy.
Yes.
We're here on the sofa with Andy Priestner, no less, who's wandered in
off the street.
Off the streets. He finds himself in the area and has come to say hello. Hello, Andy Priestner.
Hello, Troby and Lisa. I can't tell you how happy I am to be sat on this sofa.
He's been on the wine already.
I have. So maybe the happiness is slightly increased by the wine. But no, it's fantastic to be here. Having listened to this podcast for what feels like a very long time. And
it is a long time. It feels like it. Yeah.
And enjoying absolutely everything about it. And this sofa. I've thought about this sofa a lot. Probably a little too much. The last time I thought about it in detail was I was in Brisbane, in Australia, other side of the world, and I was like, I just want to be home. I just want to be sat on a sofa talking about old TV. So when I had the chance of coming to Bournemouth, I was like, yes, I must invite myself rudely and see if I can say hello.
We're very glad to have you. How did you come across us then? How did you discover around the archives? I'm fascinated now.
I think it was just about a point where I was like, "Ooh, I'm doing a lot of travelling. I need to occupy myself so I don't get bored." So I started with the Richard Herring Rehollister Per podcast, and then I thought there must be other things about TV that I could be interested in. And honestly, yours was one of the first ones I just found by just searching for TV podcasts.
All right.
And I was like, "This is cosy and yet informative, and it's my humour." So that was that's why.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Well, a few probing questions. We're going to probe you now.
Will this hurt?
I don't know. Earliest memories of television. What do you remember as a kid?
Okay, so it'll be all that 70s weirdness, like wonderful weirdness, like Fingerbobs.
Yeah.
Yoffie lifts a finger, and a mouse is there.
God, it's like he's in the room.
Bagpuss, Clangers.
Yeah.
Clangers was amazing. It is just Clangers, not the Clangers.
It is Clangers,
yes,
yeah.
Thank you. I knew you'd know.
Yeah. I get cross when people get it wrong, so I'm glad you got it right.
And of course, the wonderful Cambric Green and Trumpton and all of that stuff. Yeah, all of that was very important to me and formative.
What didn't you like as a kid, though? Is there stuff of kids' TV that you switched off? Or did you just take it as it came?
I think because it was early to mid 70s that it was pretty much all British stuff that was good. I've always been a bit sneery about American TV, and the more American TV came in the 80s.
What about Scooby-Doo or cartoons?
Oh, Scooby-Doo I loved. I often in the 70s was forced to do things for a year that I didn't want to do. I did Cubs for a year, and famously I did piano for a year. And because I had to do piano for a year on Thursdays after school, I missed Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And that was painful.
Oh dear.
And as I was plonking the keys very badly, I was thinking, I could be seeing what's going on now in Scooby-Doo. I'm annoyed. And as soon as the year was up, I stopped.
So, BBC or ITV though? That's the question.
Very much a BBC family. So it was kind of like if you ever were on ITV, it was kind of you had a look from my father. My mother was much more relaxed about it. My father was very much like, why would you put ITV on? It's wrong.
So tis was no swap shop, yes?
Oh, absolutely. Total swap shop, yes.
And Blue Peter over Magpie.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw Magpie because it just wasn't permitted. Or it wasn't even that we were told, it was more like we just knew that you didn't change channel. It was like, it's not done.
Not right.
Which sounds terribly weird. I think it was partly my influence of my grandma as well, who was very BBC.
I think we're possibly the last surviving people to whom that
makes us sound terribly old.
I know, but I know what you mean. And
Okay.
other people have said you were one or the other.
So I have huge gaps of knowledge.
Yeah.
So there's loads of ITV series that I've only discovered in the last 10 years, and I'm like, wow, that's good.
Well, there's a lot of weird ITV kids serials to look at. So
For instance, I never saw The Tomorrow People when I was growing up.
Good Lord.
Yeah, exactly. And you'd think, or Into the Labyrinth, all that stuff.
All right.
Yeah,
interesting. Doctor Who then.
Inevitably.
Earliest Doctor Who memory.
Pyramids of Mars repeat, which I believe was 76. I might
need
be wrong.
need to check that.
Yes.
I'll drop it in if we're wrong. I'll look it up later. But.
It was the mummies crunching through the woods and Sarah hiding and thinking, this is freaking scary stuff, but it's amazing. But regularly watching Doctor Who, I think I remember pretty much everything from Hand of Fear onwards. And just being very scared about Sarah having the hand in the plastic box in the Tupperware. And Leela's introduction, and being really excited and surprised by the fact that she was going with the Doctor at the end. And thinking, wow, that's actually, she's the new companion, actually. I remember being so astonished about that. So I was only 5, but I was obviously truly engaging with that.
Okay.
Yeah. But weird gaps thereafter, like... Underworld. I didn't know what that was. Until quite a few...
Blanked it out or what?
No,
Just no memory of it?
Just didn't process at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Actually, maybe that's the only gap, though.
And what about the books? Were you reading the Target books?
Yeah, I was told... well, no, I wasn't told. It was funny. I found a pamphlet in my
under a bush or something?
in my father's study. And the pamphlet it's famous in our family, was called Spot the Gifted Child. And my parents had sent off for this booklet. It was something to do with having gifted children. I don't think I was particularly gifted.
Where to get them from?
I don't know. But this is a famous book in our house, and everyone always talks about Spot the Gifted Child when I'm around at Christmas and stuff. Because there's this pink book, and it was basically about how gifted children can be different, and can be girls and can be boys, and they can like different things. And it was because I had such a passion for writing in English that they were a bit worried about it, because I'd squirrel myself away and write very bad Doctor Who stories, or whatever it was I was writing about. And I used to be very alone as a child, and very insular, and I think they were genuinely worried. So they got this material about gifted children. Anyway, one of their worries was that I spent all my time reading Target Doctor Who books, like endlessly. Every one probably about 10 times.
I think my copy of Planet of the Daleks almost fell apart.
Okay, so it wasn't Planet of the Daleks so much for me. Probably read that about 4 times, which is a low read threshold for me. Something like Planet of the Spiders, say, that was probably about 15 times, or Pyramids of Mars, or Towns of Wayne Chiang. Just endlessly went back to them and just got so much joy out of them. I felt I was in them. And the young me also didn't pay any attention to whether it was a Terence Dicks or someone else. I just enjoyed most of them. A few I struggled with. I never got through Mask of Mandragora. I don't know why. It's Philip Hinchcliffe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Never read that one.
Okay.
A few others which I was like, no, this isn't working for me. But I don't know why. Anyway.
But through this, I presume this is how you got to learn about Doctor Who pre-Tom Baker.
Yes.
So,
and I think it was the Five Faces of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
In
so would
that
have been your first sight of other Doctors?
And just being astonished and also slightly angry with my parents for not telling me. But there were previous Doctors. You know how obsessed I am with the show. You haven't even told me anything about it. And my mum was like, oh yeah, I remember when Susan left. And I'm like, what? Why are you not telling me this before?
So, had you seen like clips on Blue Peter or anything like that?
Not that I really
Nationwide?
remember. Not that I really remember. No.
Did you have any books like the Monster Book? Or
I had the second Doctor Who Monster Book, which is very much Tom Baker.
Tom Baker.
Yeah.
The
so I didn't have the earlier stuff, so I didn't know.
All right.
So there was a big void. And then Five Faces of Doctor Who was like a spiritual experience. Even the Crotons.
But Doctor Who monthly, weekly?
Doctor Who monthly from issue with Peter Davison and the Concorde on it, 78-ish.
Don't ask me about numbers, but I know the cover. Yeah.
No, I think it's 68. It was 68 because 69 is the Black Orchid cover. So
right.
68 was my
you're better
first
than me.
one. Yeah. It's sad, isn't it? And discovering that there was a season survey and the results of the season survey, and the Doctor Who fans actually wrote in to say which were their favourites. I thought that was all deeply fascinating.
So did you know any other fans at this point?
No one. It was just me.
You were the Doctor Who fandom.
Yes, in Northumberland, in Newcastle and then Northumberland. So no, I didn't know anyone. And I remember the first time it came up at school was when Adric died, and I was like, oh, there's other people who watch this. Wow, and they thought it was cool as well. But it never really developed into anything more. There was a friend, my friend Paul Brown, who I must mention, who's now sadly died of a brain tumour, which was very sad. I only discovered this recently, but he was the person who showed me there was Doctor Who Weekly. And I used to go to his house just to read back issues of Doctor Who Weekly, even though I was meant to be there to spend time with him.
Yeah.
And I used to just sit with those magazines and ignore him.
But you told me earlier that you did get involved with a group in Exeter at some point. So that was a bit later, I guess.
Yeah, that was in the early 90s. That was probably my very first sort of connection with fandom. It was a group called the Devon Seaside Devils, and it came out of the Exospace Convention.
I went to that.
Did you?
Yeah,
well, I was there
both
as well.
of them.
I did too.
Exospace 1 and 2.
Yeah,
yes.
I was there as well.
Yeah.
How funny. Because there was Lalla Ward was at the first one,
yes,
and Debbie Watling at the second.
Yeah.
And
Ian Stewart Black was there.
Yes.
Yeah. Peter Miles.
Prentice Hancock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a headache on day 2, but never mind. It was obviously so exciting. I had to retire to bed.
I was just telling you my convention story. I got there. I didn't know anything about conventions or about the availability of videos with Doctor Who on it. And I remember telling people in the queue, I've seen in the programme that there's a video room. There's a video room. They're showing Doctor Who now. And I ran to go and watch The Demons. And I'm like, why are they not going to the room where they're showing The Demons? I've read the book 20 times. Why is no one ever running after me to come to the video room? And it just was so amazing for me. So the first Exospace, you wouldn't have seen me. Because I was sat in the video room watching videos for 2 days. Because I couldn't believe they were
You
accessible.
paid your money, that's what you'd come for. Yeah.
Well, I didn't realise it was possible. This was a new joy. Anyway, the Devon Seaside Devils, which was a bit weird because I was at the university and most of the people weren't, and it was kind of like, oh, he's from the university, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm normal. Well, normal for a Doctor Who fan. And there was a fanzine, The Russell Boer Show.
Yes.
And Russell Boer...
I've got at least one copy of that in the cupboard somewhere.
So I've got all of them somewhere. But the Russell Boer was a kind of a legendary character even before I met him. Slightly odd guy. Obsessed with Katie Manning and the John Pertwee era. And yeah, they named the fanzine after him. And I gradually got to understand why. But I used to write a little section in that called Cliffhanger Corner.
Yeah.
And where I used to write about naff cliffhangers in Doctor Who and call them naff hangers, which doesn't make any sense. And I'm now looking back thinking they were probably awful what I wrote, but I did. So, yes, dig out your old copies of the Russell Boer Show.
Wow.
I'm in there.
It's a very small world, this fandom stuff, sometimes, because I generally didn't know till today that you were going to say this.
Yeah.
So that's really quite weird from my point of view as well.
So it's Miles Northcott.
That's right.
Yes,
yeah.
who's a Facebook friend now.
Yes.
Yeah.
But over time,
yeah,
you sort of branched out into loving an awful lot of other things. So is Doctor Who was it your springboard into other shows, do you think?
Yeah, and I remember the times I've interviewed actors and I've lied and said I don't know anything about Doctor Who in order to get kudos off actors and for them to open about these other series. So the first time I interviewed Louise Jameson in a hotel in London, I thought, I'm not going to tell her, because I know she'll respect me more if I pretend I'm not a Doctor Who fan. And it worked. She knows now. The cat's out of the bag. But the first time I met Pennant Roberts was to talk to him about Survivors.
Yeah.
And I never ever asked him about his Doctor Who's, because I was there to do a Survivors job and I was professional about it. And he loved the fact that I didn't ask him one question about Doctor Who, I'm sure. You know, he just loved it. That this is different.
Yeah.
But now, I regret that I didn't talk to him about...
Well, people are starting to say now, why not interview Terence Dicks about the classic serials, for God's sake?
Yeah,
because
that'd be fascinating.
Nobody ever does.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons, I think, why when we were planning round the archives, we held off a long time before we did anything Doctor Who. I felt that Doctor Who's been done to death in sort of research terms, but there's so many other shows that nobody ever talks about. So,
well, this was my same reasons why in 2003, when I started the Survivors website, which you can still get to, it's not all there anymore. I still keep renewing the website subscription, the domain, survivorstvseries.com, which I put together. And literally within a few months of putting that together, I got a an email from a DVD company in London, DD Video, now defunct, saying, would you be interested in producing the DVD release of Survivors? Yeah, a little bit.
Something to do, isn't it?
And I deliberately had done a Survivors website because there was no Survivors stuff out there.
Yeah.
I could have done a Doctor Who website, but everyone was doing that. And this led to doing DVD releases for loads of different series and meeting loads of different people. That was amazing.
I mean, it's interesting because you've seen our huge piles of DVDs.
I'm looking at them now, enviously.
And every now and then you sort of go, oh, I wrote a book for that. And I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, Secret Army and Tenko were big passions. And and Survivors. And because I've written big books about all of them, I'm kind of done on the writing almost, because they were my 3 big series other than Doctor Who. And I've kind of written what I think are good books about them. And now I've not got the same sort of I must provide to the world these books, because, I've done those biggies and I talk to all the people who matter to me.
But over there is Kessler, for example, and you did that, and I didn't know you'd done that.
Yes. Yeah, that was fun.
All Gas and Gators as well, apparently.
Yeah, without meeting any of the cast. But I did meet the writers, Edwin Apps and Pauline Devaney. Well, I met them. I talked to them. I phoned them.
Because we've got their script book for the first. Because they've done one book of missing scripts. They were going to do more, but nothing seems to have happened yet. So
they were really interesting. They were divorced, and I think the most important thing for them during the process was that I didn't refer to their divorce. Just kept checking back with me. You're not talking about the divorce, are you? And also there was this tension because Edwin Apps is a proper painter.
Yeah.
And his impression was that Pauline Devaney's just an amateur painter.
A dabbler.
Yes. And there was this tension as well. But the funny thing is that I've got a piece by Pauline Devaney on my wall, but I haven't got a piece by Edwin Apps. Maybe that's because, I don't know, I go for more accessible stuff.
But... are you still discovering series to fall in love with?
Yeah, it's your bloody fault.
Is it my fault?
Yours and Lisa's fault. I mean, I was just saying, I bought, and I'm happy to admit it, the complete Terry and June because of you two.
Yay.
I bought Sergeant Cork. I bought the Hinge and Bracket sets. Loads of different things because of you spouting on and encouraging me to watch old stuff.
Is this through no memory of this stuff? Or
everyone had to watch Terry and June, didn't they? I mean, it was
yeah.
just on. But as I said, the ITV stuff, big
Sergeant
gaps.
Cork was completely new to us, and
was it?
we just took a punt on it. Why did we even buy Sergeant Cork, Lisa?
Because we saw a clip on, it was around the 70s, of Peter Sallis as a Chinese character.
Yes.
Which was not why you were meant to go, oh my god, that's awful, but I went, oh, that looks interesting.
Yeah.
And it was quite cheap, so I just bought the whole thing.
Yeah.
The whole series.
It's amazing. Don't you think the price of box sets when it's the whole series is amazing? I can't resist it. You had them on Fidget. Oh wow, okay. I bought Adam Adamant because of you.
All right, okay.
So there's some dreadful episodes, but
I
there's
know,
also some good ones.
But yeah, why don't we get commission for this? Because people keep saying,
Network, if you're listening.
Yeah, we keep selling
Come
your
on.
videos for you.
Come on,
What's
you
going
do.
on
You do.
That's weird, but
yeah.
But yeah, so you've got a lot to watch, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's having the time, and I don't. It's sitting down and saying, "Look, let's put something on," because you end up watching stuff. We're going through Line of Duty at the moment, which feels a betrayal to all the old TV, if I'm honest. But we did sit down and we watched a very good episode of Rockcliffe's Babies last week, with the gorgeous Susanna Schelling in it. So when we do make an effort to sit down and watch stuff, we always enjoy it. And we're going through Secret Army as well with my son at the moment. We're halfway through series 2. He's 10, and it's the finer details are a bit lost on him as to what's going on. But generally, he's enjoying it, and that's wonderful.
Passing it on.
Yes.
Yeah. Does it feel like that people should know about this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And something about the way TV was made and the care and the character development is what I'm passionate about. And that was always in Doctor Who what it was. It was about the characters, and the same in Tenko and Secret Army and Survivors. It's about character. It's not about spending huge amounts of money. It's about caring about do you believe in this character? Is it honest? Is it true? And do the actors commit? And I think in all those series they largely do.
Yeah.
Not all the time in, say, Survivors, I would say. There's issues. Survivors has issues, particularly in its third series. But, yeah, there's so much to enjoy, isn't there?
But you're doing a podcast of your own now, so let's just briefly give that a plug.
Yes, World Enough and Time. My sister and I always watched Doctor Who growing up. In the late 80s, when my parents divorced, my sister and I became kind of best pals, confidants, supporters of each other. My sister's 6 years younger than me. Alex. Hello, Alex.
Hello. Waving.
And she lives in New Zealand now, so this kind of connection was slightly lost, I guess. But back in the late 80s, early 90s, when all the videos were coming out, I'd bring back these videos of Doctor Who, and we just devoured them endlessly. And we had Doctor Who-a-thons through the night. We wouldn't go to bed, and we just watch stuff. Have a kettle by the sofa, and just. I was in sixth form. She was, I don't know. I guess about to start high school. I don't know. And we devoured Who then. That shelf of videos was so important to us at a time when, let's be honest, we wanted to escape from the reality of our existence in a tiny council house. Where we didn't have enough money to really eat because my dad had left, and it was difficult times, and Doctor Who was kind of our saviour. And of course there was the end of classic Doctor Who at that time as well, and that was bloody brilliant, season 26. So years later, suddenly the penny dropped. I know how I can have contact time with my sister. Why don't we podcast? And I still remember the text I sent. Why don't we do a podcast? Because we would have so much fun, we'd wet ourselves laughing, and occasionally, because of the job I do, freelance work, I can probably get over to New Zealand and we can occasionally record some in your living room. Yeah. And so it's proved. And
or on the beach.
On the beach, our Reign of Terror episode, which was one of the most fun things I've ever done on a beach.
I have to say, lovely audio quality of those waves coming in.
No, but I was like, it's probably interfering. It's probably irritating everyone.
No, it was nice.
Oh, was it? Okay,
no,
that's what
right,
Alex said. Alex said it'll be fine. Don't worry. But yeah.
So you've got plans for this for the future?
Well, I've just had a bit of a hiatus because I took on too much work. I do consulting, and I just ended up doing too much work, and it was like, we've got to get back on the road with this, because when we do it, we love it. So I think we're recording one on Saturday, the next episode, which will be a Colin Baker, because we haven't done Uncle Cole yet.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That's lovely.
Thank you. As I say,
welcome to the sofa.
So good to be here. I hope to return.
You might end up in a cartoon at this rate. So
scary,
we shall see.
Scary stuff.
Andy, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you to Andy for doing that.
Thank you, Andy. It was lovely to meet him finally.
It's weird because we never met.
No.
But I think we instantly got on.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. Yes, we've all got the same kind of sense of humour, I think.
Because I had to meet him in the dark with my torch. And he seemed amazed that I was tall.
Yes.
So I'm not as tall as he is.
No.
But yeah, lovely to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And now for the final article. Finally, we actually do something.
Yes.
Because people have said we haven't done much recently.
No, we've been slacking.
Yeah, I know. But now we're going to take a trip to Amsterdam, aren't we? Where we're going to meet
Van der Valk.
Good evening, Lisa.
Good evening, Andrew.
Van der Valk, then.
Yes, Van der Valk.
We've done a fair old bit of Van der Valk.
Yes. Or how do you say it?
Van der Valk.
Yeah, because sometimes it's really odd, this series, because obviously it's set in Holland, but it's all British actors, apart from the odd one or two Dutch actors. So it's all done in British accents.
Yeah.
And they use words like geezer and mate and bird and things. But then when he says his name, he puts a bit of an accent in it.
Yeah.
When he says Prost, which is the, cheers, he puts a bit of an accent in it.
Yeah. But who's he? Who's this?
Barry Foster, sorry.
As Van der
Who
Valk.
is Van der Valk? Pete Van der Valk. Apparently Pete's not his name.
Okay.
It's a nickname.
But this is quite a weird series to watch in order.
Yes.
Because there are 5 series of it,
but
they run from 1972 to 1992.
Yes, which is obviously not consecutively. So it goes 72, 73.
Yeah.
Then there's a big gap.
Yeah.
And it's sort of 77, 78.
Yeah.
Then it's like 91, 92. And obviously the 91, 92 ones are feature length, because that was what television was doing then.
But each season feels very different.
It does.
It?
It's apart from series 2 and I think Lloyd Shirley works on series 1 and series 2 and possibly a bit on series 3. But when you get to series 3, it's Houston Films that's doing it. So it's the same people that are doing the Sweeney and things like that. So you get different people working on it, and it's noticeable. There's a lot more people credited on the Houston on series 3 than there is on series 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But Robert Banks Stewart is script editor on series 2, and he gives it a very different feel to series 1.
Because you said series 2, it feels like Van der Valk is sort of butting heads with authority.
Yes.
Is that right?
Series 1, we're going to be talking about an episode that is from series 1 later on in the article. Series 1, obviously he's interested in getting to the truth of things. Series 2, you're still getting that, but it doesn't matter who is involved. He will try to get to the truth, doesn't matter who it is. And it does feel a bit like sort of Sergeant Cork. That it doesn't matter to him who the perpetrator of the crime is, he wants to bring them to justice.
Yeah. But the episode we're sort of concentrating on is called Destroying Angel, which is the second episode
of series 1
of the first season. It's got some interesting guest stars. I think
it has. We should talk also about the title sequence.
Yeah.
Because the title sequence changes for every series.
Well, for this one, he's up.
They're on a sort of top of a church.
Yeah,
on the roof.
I just wrote in big letters "littering."
Yes, he's really naughty because he smokes cigars and he just pulls the plastic off and throws it. So
no concern for plastic.
Yeah, no. But series 2, he's driving through the centre of Amsterdam, and the idea of that was that I think it was from Robert Banks Stewart that. We're not seeing enough of Amsterdam with it being on top of a church, so let's drive through Amsterdam. So,
and in series 3 as well, you get people waving.
You get people waving at him, yeah. And then there's a dog in one bit, isn't there? A dog on a cart.
But talking about dogs, you better say about the annual that you managed to track down.
Yes. What? Were you saying managed to track down? I just looked on the internet. It's really not hard.
You just typed in Van der Valk annual. Did you know there was one? Or
No, I just thought.
Is there one?
Is there one? Because I know at the point that Euston Films were doing the Sweeney, there's a couple of Sweeney annuals, which still seems really odd because it's not the kind of series you'd really want children to watch. And I just thought, I wonder, because it's around the same time frame, whether there's a Van der Valk annual. And I looked, and there was.
Okay.
And there's stories and strips and interviews with. Or focuses on some of the characters. And there's an interview with Barry Foster in here. That they ask him about his interests and things. And there's a bit here that's interesting. And what they've asked him is, has he got any pets? And he says he's got a Rottweiler. And they're like, oh, beg pardon,
What's a
Rottweiler? They don't know what it is. So he says, dogs. They're named after a small village near Stuttgart in West Germany and come from a stock of working dogs, originally bred by the Romans. Excellent guard dogs, and they'll even pull a cart. Now, we were just trying to imagine him arriving from work in a cart pulled by dogs.
Yeah, going over the bridge.
Waving at people. They're far more intelligent than hunting dogs, and always dying to know what you want them to do next. What we would consider as play, they think of as work. Now, apparently, Frank Windsor also had one. And it says, Frank Windsor, another TV cop, Superintendent John Watt from Softly Softly. He had a female Rottweiler, and they were thinking of mating them and starting a kennel for them in the UK, where they were still pretty rare in 1977-78.
Okay. We should also say about Robert Banks Stewart.
Yes, Robert Banks Stewart.
His claim.
Yes. Now, Robert Banks Stewart wrote his memoirs for Milk Books.
Yes.
And obviously, as we said, he was the script editor on Series 2. Now, some of the stories involve storylines, because obviously Amsterdam and Holland in general has a broader mind on sex workers and things like that. And they have live sex shows, and apparently Robert Banks Stewart went to a live sex show and fell asleep twice.
I'm just imagining, because we've been to pantomimes with Paul.
Yes.
And didn't we go to one that starred Bonnie Langford?
Yes.
And he fell asleep.
Now, I should say we weren't in the middle of a row.
No.
We were right at the back of the auditorium in 3 individual seats.
Yeah.
So, and I did look over, and he was snoring a little bit. Sorry, Paul. And I did wonder how he managed to sleep through all the noise, really.
But yes, also the Douglas Camfield book by Michael Seeley does a little bit of stuff about Van der Valk. Because Van der Valk sees Douglas Camfield notching up his 100th production.
Yes.
And his 100th thing shown on air.
Yes.
Because the filming and transmission orders are the wrong way round.
It doesn't really matter. He does 2 for Series 2, and it doesn't matter which one is shown first. One was his 100th that he filmed. One is his 100th to be shown on the television.
Yeah.
But one was was filmed later, but pulled forward in the running order.
But anyway, back to the episode, Destroying Angel.
Mm-hmm.
There's a dead... Well, there's not quite a dead body, is there?
He's not a dead body. No, there's a man in a room, and there's a doctor there, and he's played by James Carncross, who's in The Crotons.
All right.
And another Doctor Who episode that I've forgotten which one it is.
Isn't he in The Reign of Terror?
He's in The Reign of Terror, yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember what it was called, sorry for a second. He's Lemaitre, isn't he?
Right.
It's hard because I don't know if his bits exist or not. So, and basically, there's a policeman there.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what the basic PCs are called in Holland, but we were quite amused by the fact that the sergeants in Holland are called brigadiers.
That's right.
Because he calls the brigadiers in, and we were just expecting Nicholas Courtney to appear. That would have been quite funny, actually, if you've got Nicholas Courtney in to play one of the brigadiers. One of us played by Dave Carter, who's in Hand of Fear, though.
All right.
Is it Hand? No, it's not Hand of Fear. It's Android Invasion.
Right.
Sorry.
He's in a lot, actually, Dave Carter.
But
I think he's a Silurian as well.
Is he?
Yeah.
All right,
so.
okay.
Yeah.
But he's definitely very noticeable in one of them. And I've completely forgotten what we were talking about.
The dead body.
The nearly dead man, yes. So he's been poisoned. So they take him to the hospital, and they're trying to work out why anybody would want to kill him and what the poison is. Now, as we've said, the name of the episode is called Destroying Angel, which might give you a clue.
Yeah.
If you've seen.
Because later on they
these
find
things.
that there's corrosive been put on his fingertips as well to
get rid of his
fingerprints.
Yes. Yeah.
But I did write down geezer because the phrase geezer is definitely used.
It is definitely used, and it's very innocuous.
Yeah. But the thing about Van der Valk is you shouldn't play a drinking game whilst watching this series.
Don't try and keep up with him drinking. It usually only takes about 5 minutes into an episode before he's started drinking. Because there's a lot of drinking and driving.
Well, he has wine and malt whiskey.
Yeah.
But his drink of choice is Amstel beer, isn't it?
And he has a little liqueur thing as well.
Yeah. But Amstel is... I noticed there was a plane flying overhead towards the end with a big advert for Amstel. It's almost as though sponsored by Amstel.
Yes.
But I got some for research purposes.
You haven't tried it yet, though, have
Not
you?
yet. And in the season 18 writers... interview,
the writers' room
interview on the new Doctor Who Blu-ray.
Yeah,
Steve Gallagher orders some Amstel.
Yeah,
and we did ask him about this, and he says normally he likes Malbec,
yes,
but
it was a hot day.
It was a hot day, so he went for Amstel. So any excuse really. At home with Van der Valk.
Yes,
his missus you see a lot.
You do.
She regenerates
several times,
but. He's got kids, but you never really see them.
No,
do you?
You see them in one episode where they're very obviously played by local Dutch children because they've got Dutch accents and nobody else has.
Well, we've got some info on the Dutch filming later on. And his sort of assistant is Kroon, isn't it?
Kroon, yes, played by Michael Latimer.
Yeah.
And he's in series 1 and 2. He doesn't return for series 3. I don't know if the actor was unavailable. And it's a little bit odd because obviously in series 1 and 2, if he needs to talk to somebody, he talks to Johnny, he calls him. He talks to him. In series 3, because he's got no inspector in it, he ends up having to talk to his boss, played by Nigel Stock.
Samson,
yeah.
In the annual, there's a nice pin-up of
Nigel Stock. There is a nice
Stock.
picture of Nigel Stock.
If you want to put Nigel Stock up on your bedroom wall.
Yes.
But they discover a book of artwork of flowers.
They do have flowers, yes.
And Patricia Quinn makes an appearance as well.
Patricia Quinn's your local prostitute, isn't she? Really, she's the one that's reported that there's a man who is sick to the patrolman, who's played by Trevor Martin.
Well, what do you say when you have a drink?
Prost.
That's right. Yeah. But he goes off to a local sort of book dealer's, isn't it?
Does.
Sartorius. Now, have you ever heard of Sartorius? You probably haven't.
No.
I've seen the name Sartorius an awful lot because they manufacture analytical balances. I've weighed a lot of things on Sartorius balances over the time. So it's just weird to see that.
To see it on there, yeah.
But he's an art expert with an accent.
Only a little accent.
And he's got loads of pussies,
He's got lots of pussies in his shop. Yeah. And he keeps making, every time Van der Valk goes in there, he makes him put some money in for the pussies.
Yeah. I always thought of him a bit like Mr. Sweet from Ace of Wands. And it's a shame he doesn't come back in later episodes, because I thought he was...
If only to see the pussies.
Nice. But yeah, also Van der Valk, even his choice of sweets is alcoholic.
Yeah, wine gums.
Wine gums. And I did think of Tony Hancock. He's walked off with my wine gums.
Yeah.
But this book apparently is very rare.
Yes.
And last one that was sold went for 700 quid.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get a little bit of chemistry going on, as the analyst in a tiny little lab.
Yes, that's really poorly lit.
Yeah, he's got his Bunsen burner going and his pH paper, and I wince because he's doing mouth pipetting. He's sucking stuff up in a glass pipette, but using his mouth. You're supposed to use a bulb or a pipette filler because if you get it in your mouth
and it's corrosive,
it's going to sting.
To say the least.
And then he starts tasting this powder as well, and I'm going, don't taste it. So there's a lot of like health and safety, and I know in the early 70s this was standard stuff. So using pipette fillers was like weedy. You sucked it up and
suck it up, man,
and dealt with it. But it turns out to be there's some baking powder, and some heroin, isn't it, or horse, as they call it. But they've got the fingerprints, but they apparently belong to a bloke who was killed 20 years ago in a car crash.
Yes.
So something weird is going on.
Yes. Well, it's
There's always something weird going on. This is actually one of the less weird episodes.
This is one of the less weird ones, yes. Yes.
But he goes off to the hotel with his missus, because 15 years ago he proposed. He has a malt whiskey and she has some horrible cocktail, doesn't she? That she has to tell the bloke how to do.
Yeah, that's like you at that hotel in, was it Cambridge? Well, you had to tell him how to make a shandy.
I had to make a shandy.
How can you be a barman and not know how to make a shandy? I just think he was just bussed in that evening.
Possibly. But eventually they get a call from the bookshop that somebody's been in making inquiries. So they have to put more money in for the pussies.
Yes.
And this turns out to be Richard Hurndall.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Being only what Richard Hurndall can be.
Yeah, because he's a sort of... What is he? A sort of servant?
He's sort of he's a butler or a valet or a all-round sort of manservant.
To an old bloke who's the artist, the book who drew the flowers in the book.
Monsieur Le Baron, as they call him.
And it turns out that the body was his son.
And that he faked his death.
Yeah.
And stole the book.
And as far as we can tell, Richard Hurndall done in him with mushrooms, didn't he?
Yes.
Or at least, but the trouble is they can't prove any of it.
No.
I like the line about scientists being gamblers. They won't say yes and they won't say no, but they'll say, well, maybe.
Yeah, and they'd put money on just every horse in the race.
And to be fair, if you're a scientist, you often have to say that.
Yes.
Because you can't categorically prove anything.
No.
But you can say what probabilities are and things like that. So I understand his frustration, but if you want a true scientific answer, often it's very hard to pin things down like that.
And there is a sort of recurring theme in this series that the episodes just often end without a resolution.
Yeah.
So nobody really gets arrested. They just end.
Yeah.
And this one, it just sort of stops in a way, doesn't it? It's like it's filled its quota of 50 minutes.
But this is quite a hard series, I think, to research in any great detail, isn't it? Because we've got the Robert Banks Stewart and the Douglas Camfield books.
Yeah.
We've got the annual, and we've got Made for Television Euston Films Limited, which talks about all the union troubles.
Yes, they had before Series 3.
Yeah. But... So we just sort of asked around and if anybody had any more info. And we were very pleased to get this from Martin Fenton, which I'll read out. Bit of trivia for you. When I worked in Amsterdam, I found out one of my colleagues, René, started his career coordinating the Dutch end of Van der Valk. Everything from booking technicians to sorting out accommodation for visiting actors and crew. He worked then for the media end of the VVV, the Dutch Tourist and Publicity Office. I nearly said Dorset. Part of the original deal was to employ Dutch technicians and actors for the film items. You often find the native Dutch actors are children in the series. There was a quota. There's an episode or two with a conspicuously middle-aged, quote, teenager in the plot. That usually means the character is going to be involved in a fight scene. The series was well received in Holland, although the concept of a series about Dutch detectives performed entirely in English accents amuses my Dutch friend no end, and a second series was commissioned. All went well until they were doing the last of the film items when a technician from Thames touched something belonging to the Dutch Film Union. There was a strike, and Thames's people returned home without a complete set of shots. It's the episode with Lala Ward in it. 2 scenes are affected from memory, and they ended up shooting a cafe scene on VT at Teddington Lock, and there's some very dodgy studio chroma key work at the museum. The third series wasn't commissioned until after Euston Films had been formed. After that, they contracted local talent through freelance agencies rather than Dutch TV. Rene added that Barry Foster was one of the nicest men he has ever met.
Which is nice.
So that was lovely. So thank you for that,
yes.
Martin. That was really nice to get a sort of personal look at the series. And of course, unfortunately, there aren't many people now sort of associated with the series on a sort of long-term basis that that you can even talk to. But yeah, it does very good for Doctor Who actors, doesn't it? Because as we mentioned, Lala Ward here, but the one we watched the other night was from series 3, which had Patrick Troughton playing a football-loving vicar, priest, and
William Russell.
Only in a very small bit at the end. A very
small bit at the end, but a quite crucial part of it, because the character he was playing had apparently gone missing, and he was a prosecutor, and he was due to do a big trial. Oh, and Hubert Rees as well.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they were worried he'd been nobbled or kidnapped or something, and it just turns out that he'd got sick of his wife and gone off.
And Freddie Jones.
And Freddie Jones, with his fancy woman. Yeah.
Well, playing a blind sort of.
Well, he wasn't actually blind.
No, he comes in the bank waving his stick about with his dark glasses on. But the third season does. That first episode of the third season does feel very different.
It does.
Because it starts with a car chase, doesn't it?
Cars? Starts, yes, indeed, with the car chase.
And it does feel like it's the Sweeney, doesn't it? It does
feel like it's the Sweeney. It later goes on to feel like a bit like The Professionals. Because there's somebody stalking Van der Valk and his wife.
Yeah.
Who is now played by a different actress.
And Donald G.
And Donald G. gets
exploded.
So
that'll teach him to stay on the move.
Yes.
But
and Michael Sheard was in an episode.
Oh, that's right. Yes. But yeah, the second episode, the Troughton one, did strike me as being the comedy episode.
Yeah, there's lots of little bits in it.
Yeah. And we should say about the theme tune as well.
We should.
Because it's one of the most famous theme tunes, I think.
It is.
In sort of TV history, and one of the few that sort of gets on to Top of the Pops, doesn't it? Yeah. As it gets to number 1.
It does.
And released as a single, which did very well. But it's also amusing that there is the episode where they're going through the red light district.
Yes.
And suddenly somebody's thought to do a version of the theme tune, which is, I've described it as the Wacka Wacka.
The Wacka Wacka thing.
One. Because there's this whole wow, 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 wow. It really is very, very funny to listen to.
Yeah, we were just stunned the first time we heard it.
Yeah, and I think I'll probably play it at this point anyway. But yeah, I mean, we're 2 series down and into the third series.
Enjoying the third series slightly less.
It is jarring after watching the first 2 series that suddenly interiors are done on film.
Yes,
and it doesn't feel right to me.
It doesn't feel right. We said this back last year in our piece about the 1998 Jack the Ripper series, that the difference that it's done on film and it looks beautiful, but it distances you slightly from the action. Whereas if you're on videotape, it makes you feel like almost that you're in the room, that it's real. And that's what it does with Van der Valk.
Because when he and his newly regenerated wife are in the house, I was almost trying to vid fire it in my head. I was like, no, this is wrong. This should be on video.
Because it is noticeable. There are scenes, because there's an episode that's set in a tractor firm. They sell tractors and have agricultural.
That's Christopher Benjamin.
And it's Christopher Benjamin. And
not playing a tractor.
Not playing a tractor. He's on film outside.
Yeah.
The moment he comes in, it's studio and video.
Yeah.
And it's not as jarring as it can be sometimes, but it is going, oh, we're in studio.
Well, as they all say, real life looks like videotape to me.
It does. It doesn't look like film.
Maybe it's something to do with how I was brought up on television.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, outside looks like film, inside looks like videotape.
Yeah.
Must be something weird about my eyes.
Possibly,
yeah. But yeah, so... Yeah, Van der Valk is certainly well worth a look,
yes,
and of course
it's a bit odd.
Yeah, you've got the complete set anyway. Was that fairly decent value?
It wasn't too bad.
Yeah. And how many? Yeah, you get 11 discs worth of stuff. So
yeah, and as I say, the 90s stuff is done very much like Inspector Morse in a sort of 2-hour film, really, but worth a look. Got Ronald Hines in. So who's always good value.
But there you are, Van der Valk then.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely worth a look.
Yes.
Okay, Proust.
Proust.
Thank you to us for doing Van der Valk.
Yeah, I'm really not sure we can do that, but still.
Now, an extra piece that we haven't really planned on doing, but we should definitely include it.
Yes, this time.
Yes.
Because Nick, Paul and Andy Ching, who is a new voice.
I was going to say Andy Ching has not been on.
He's not been on yet,
on here,
but hopefully he'll be on again.
He is.
They've done a short piece on the Tales of the Unexpected episode, My Lady Love, My Dove, starring Shane Rimmer, who sadly passed away a few days ago. So they're looking at the episode and his legacy. And we had the pleasure of meeting Shane Rimmer once, many years ago at Gunfighters signing for the VHS.
Yeah, because we got the cover signed, haven't we?
Yeah. And it was him and David Graham was there, and David Graham accused him of shooting him, which is in fact untrue, because it was Lawrence Payne.
Yeah. So this will be the final piece, and then we'll go into the end credits and everything. So,
but do stay on after the end credits, because there might be a surprise.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
But so thank you again for listening.
Yes.
And hope to see you all again in episode 35.
Yes.
Blimey.
Hello, Andrew and Lisa. It's me, Paul the Shy Yeti again. I'm here with Nick Goodman and Andy Ching again, and we've just watched an episode of Tales of the Unexpected. Nick will give you the information, the reason why we chose the particular episode we did.
This is an episode called My Lady Love, My Dove, written by the great Roald Dahl, and the reason why I've chosen it and we're watching it is Shane Rimmer, the actor is in this episode, sadly died yesterday at the age of 89, and I've always liked this episode. I've always been quite funny and well acted and quite fun, and no one gets murdered or mangled or anything like that as they usually do in Tales of the Unexpected, but it's actually a lot of good, clean fun, lots of fun banter, and it's a good role for Shane Rimmer,
who's partnered with Elaine Stritch.
The wonderful Elaine Stritch, whose comic timing and everything is just immaculate. It's so I thought, my first instinct was to stick on the Gunfighters, but 4 episodes, I will do it at some point, but 4 episodes, quite a long time, but of course hugely prolific career. Obviously the 4 episodes of Doctor Who, best known for Thunderbirds as Scott Tracy. He's been in everything, Space 1999, Bond 3 times I think, and I met him in 2001, I think, was it 1 and 2, and lovely guy, and we talked about Roger Moore, and who we worked with on Spy Who Loved Me. So great chap, and very sad to hear he's gone, but
from a plot point of view, the episode's about a couple who are having a party, but they come up with the idea of putting sort of listening devices into the bedroom of their guests so they can hear what they're gossiping about. And when they do, they find out that they've come to kind of rip them off, and then it becomes a bit of a sort of, I wonder if we can use what they're how they're going to rip us off to rip them back off. You never actually find out whether they're successful.
One of the things that's I always find interesting about Roald Dahl's Tales of the Unexpected is there's nearly always an American character in there, and I don't know if that's deliberate or whether it was a chance by Anglia to kind of sell it to America. But this is the second of 2 Elaine Stritch episodes. She did an episode in Series 1 as well, which is also written by Roald Dahl. But great actress, and I actually based a character in the Magnus Editor on Elaine Stritch. She's a very, very funny actor.
Andy, any thoughts on Shane Rimmer or the episode?
I love Shane Rimmer. Yeah. He's like the US version of Marco Ripper, who you see, almost everything you've ever seen ever. Scott Tracy was my favourite Thunderbirds. He's one of the faces that I've seen throughout my life, and I'm pretty sure I saw this one way back in the day, because it's the whole counting off of the cards. It still makes no sense to me without doing it. Stuff like that just seems really familiar. But a great character piece. And I say quite light on the murder and the gruesomeness for a change.
That could well come later in the episode. in the episode, we don't the bit you don't see filmed.
Actually, Shane Rimmer's wonderfully cast against Elaine Stritch because he's kind of low key and normal, regular guy, and she's kind of the big Broadway in your face, amusingly totally selfish kind of a rich bitch, and it's just a wonderful character piece. I've always liked it. And it's nice to have a whimsical one for a change. It's it's they can't all be about murder and trying to do away with the husband or whatever. But,
well, you started off with that instead, didn't you?
Yes, that's right.
We get the murders out.
Yes,
here's the story.
I used to love it when Roald Dahl introduced the episode as he does in this one. For the first 2 series, I think he does it in every single episode. Mainly because he's just so creepy. He's creepier than the episode itself. He makes everything seem really sinister, which is great. And I think it lost something when he stopped introducing it. He was introduced stories that he hadn't written, but it just added something to it. By the time this went out in 1980, I was a massive fan of the series, and I'd never missed an episode, and I was hooked on it really. And the title sequence, absolutely hypnotic, and Ron Grainer's theme music is one of the last great iconic ones he wrote, because of course he died in 81. So everybody still talks about it. So good stuff.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much for suggesting this one.
That was episode 34 of Round the Archives.
Starring Lisa Parker, Andrew Trowbridge, Martin Holmes, Andy Priestner, Paul Chandler, Nick Goodman, and Andy Ching.
Thanks also to Martin Fenton, Michael Seeley, and Matt West.
On the musical side, you heard Dan Tate and Paul Chandler.
The script for Van der Valk, Destroying Angel, was by Michael Chapman.
And the producer was Michael Chapman. Here he is now, Van der Valk. Martha Cat, Martha Cat, Martha Cat. Martha Cat, Martha Cat, it's Martha Cat. Martha Cat is in the kitchen now. Martha Cat, Martha Cat, Martha Cat is in the kitchen and she's eating her crunchy food. Martha Cat, it's Martha Cat. The music's run out.